Welcome back as we continue our discussion of Sula by Toni Morrison. Even though those two female characters, I feel like they stay pretty true to themselves through the whole story, there's also these moments where you're like, but wait a minute, she should have felt something there and she didn't, or she felt something there and I didn't expect her to. So we're kept on our toes. And I agree with you. I think she should have known Nell well enough to know that sleeping with Jude was a no-no, of all the men in all the towns in all the world. Why would she sleep with her best friend's husband and expect no repercussion, no consequence? Of course there's consequence to that, So, it's almost like this really smart girl just did a really dumb thing, as a woman. It's very convoluted. It's not a healthy relationship at that point. That's for sure.
That's interesting. What you're saying about Chicken Little, it's almost like because she faces no consequences for that wrong
Yep.
act,
hmm
then she's like, okay, I'm not going to face any
If I
consequences for any
survived
wrong.
that without any consequences, if I didn't get in trouble for that, the death of another human being,
Mm-hmm.
I'm scot-free for the rest of my life, right? I don't have to worry about anything. It's almost like that. I don't know if that, I mean, that just may be my take on it, but there seems to be an element of that going on in her adult life, that's how she doesn't care what the town thinks of her. She doesn't care what people think of her. She doesn't care that the women don't like her. She doesn't care, she doesn't care, she doesn't care, right? And when she sleeps with Jude, she doesn't care. I mean, she's a little bit surprised that Nell is so upset. I felt like when if I remember correctly, I feel like she was a little bit like, huh, well, how dare you be mad at me for such a stupid thing as sleeping with your husband?
Mm-hmm.
It wasn't that big a deal. Poor Nell. But Nell's not, perfect, right? I mean,
Mm-mm.
she's not like perfect. So I don't know. It's a very I don't know. When Sula watches her mother burn, when she sees Nell's pain, after she sleeps with Nell's husband, I mean, it's the same kind of odd, distancing, cold. Cold isn't the right word, but you know what I'm saying. There's something not human about that. It's not the normal human reaction, and so I think circling. Toni Morrison is doing a lot of circling with us. Now Nell, back with to the Chicken Little thing, Nell excused herself. She did not take from what happened to Chicken Little.
Mm-hmm.
She from the get-go, she didn't ever she told herself it wasn't her fault, it was all Sula's fault. She just was there. It wasn't, she doesn't have anything to feel bad about. Sula was the one who felt bad, but then she was freed by that as well. Nell never was freed. And it's later in the book that she comes to realize, actually, I think it's the very end of the book, she comes to realize that she was as responsible because they shared everything, including the death of Chicken Little. It was on both of them. And you know, that's when she realizes, that it was always Sula and her friendship with Sula that mattered the most to her. But she's never, I think part of the reason she lived such a conventional life is because of the Chicken Little thing. She had convinced herself that it wasn't her fault, she wasn't to blame, but she spent the rest of her life trying to act conventional and normal and I don't want to say perfect, but live that kind of a life. Whereas Sula was the wild off in the wild doing crazy stuff, does that kind of make sense too? I don't know.
It does,
Yeah.
yeah. I would love to know a little bit more about what we think Morrison's trying to say about female friendships.
Ooh, yeah. Deborah, what do you think?
Well, this is a story that it's all sorts of testing grounds, and they survive and they don't survive, and then survive again, and then the love shines at the end. it is, topsy-turvy, convoluted. There's no straight line in anything. And I think that they both push each other to their best. They both push each other to their worst.
Mm-hmm.
And they're both necessary to each other.
Mm-hmm.
And, where we think that Sula should be feeling X, Y, and Z, she may not be feeling X, Y, and Z because of who she is, but by golly, she really has a good strength on, A, B, and C.
Mm-hmm. Well, yeah.
So,
and I think, and to be,
it's just, they are so, they need each other to be complete.
yeah.
And
yet they don't
I don't
give
see
each
it as
other
a women relationship. I see it as two human beings. I see it mostly as in that light, that to be whole, to be self, that's they are necessary for each other to become that.
Yeah. Well, and to be fair to Sula for a minute, just because something you said just made me think of this. It's they need each other. Sula needs Nell just as much as Nell needs Sula, right? Nell is heartbroken and devastated when Sula sleeps with Jude, and that ruins the friendship from Nell's point of view. But what ruined the friendship from Sula's point of view? I think it was the fact that Nell got married and was living this conventional life that Sula no longer fit into. She left for 10 years because of that. In her mind, Nell broke the friendship. She comes back, they try to be friends again, but Nell's got a whole different lifestyle than Sula now. Nell's a mother. She's a wife. She's living this normal kind of life. And Sula isn't. Sula is probably pissed. She may not verbalize it, but she sleeps with Jude, Nell's husband. Hello.
I don't think Sula wanted a Nell life.
No, but she wanted Nell. No, she didn't. No, I'm not saying that. She needed Nell though, and she couldn't be with Nell comfortably because Nell was living this conventional life that Sula had no place in. She wasn't well received by the rest of the women in the town, but the rest of the women in the town liked Nell. Nell had, you know what I'm saying? Sula didn't fit into Nell's world anymore, and she blamed Nell for that. Not herself. She didn't blame her own behavior because she never blamed her own behavior, right? But I'm playing devil's advocate for Sula right now. That it's not just Sula who slept with Jude and ruined the friendship. From Sula's point of view, Nell ruined the friendship long before Sula slept with Jude. And I think that's why she thought sleeping with Jude was no big deal, because she'd already been hurt by Nell. She'd already had her friendship with Nell broken by Nell with Jude, So what's a big deal if she sleeps with Jude? He caused all the problems in the first place almost, I mean, it was just, it's almost like a lashing out in a really weird, kind of 10 years later way. I don't know. I don't know. I'm just playing devil's advocate,
Sure. Yeah, I think you bring up an excellent point, Deborah, about these are two particular human beings. It is a human story of these particular individuals. I don't think that she's making that many universal sweeping statements about female friendship other than this, that female friendship can be as powerful and important, if not more important, than the relationships we see in romantic partnerships. So
that's definitely what the ending's about, for sure.
For sure.
Yeah, she definitely ties up that bow at the end, in a beautiful way. I mean, obviously, again,
it reminded me of the characters in The Color Purple. The female protagonists in The Color Purple, Oprah Winfrey and the other one, I can't think of their names right now, but that female friendship, that woman friendship, that self friendship, as your other self, whatever, was more important than husbands and relationships with grandparents. Now, all those other are secondary, but having that other self to round you out and to fulfill you and for you to be fulfilled is, comes from, because only a woman can know a woman's pain and a woman's sorrow. You know, I know that I've already got this poem already started in my head about the power of sorrow. So
Ooh. Next up, we continue our discussion of Sula by Toni Morrison.